So let's program our basic kit. We won't do anything too extreme or exotic this time around. We'll just go through all the basic parameters and see whether we can enhance things a bit. Now to begin, you'll want to have an initialize kit, so a couple of ways you can do it. You can go Shift Clear, and depending on where you are, twiddle around until you see Clear Kit. Press it again and you'll have a clear kit. Or you can go Load Kit, and usually in most programs there'll be quite a few blank spaces which will have an initialized kit on it. You can just load that. Now I have got a starter pattern here, just so we can test things out as we go along. Now if you go into Performance, you can hear all the sounds, which is very nice, but you can also still program them, which was a firmware update some time ago, which is a great thing. The only thing is you've got to go back to voice to select which one you want to be editing. So we've selected the bass drum, go back into Performance so we can hear it here, and then look at the parameters. Now in the coarse tuning, I tend to like to stick to octaves just because that's the pedantic sort of fellow I am. So -12 is 1 octave, and go down to 3 octaves down is probably a bit low, so we'll go 2 octaves down. Now just to state the obvious, headphones really helps when you're programming a drum machine, especially when you're doing the low end stuff. But you sort of need to have a bit of both, because what can sound good in headphones sometimes doesn't sound so great in the real world, and vice versa. Anyway, sine, triangle. Now we get on to some weirder sort of stuff. Let's just go triangle for now. Then we've got the two basic envelopes. We've got the amplitude envelope and the pitch envelope. And the amplitude envelope is the sort of ultimate what you hear envelope, because you can program something long and exotic into the pitch envelope, but if the amplitude envelope has already said good night ladies, then you're not going to hear your lovely tail on the pitch envelope. So we'll make this short and sharp, which is quite extreme. But I tend to like things pretty extreme. Now it's all in the modulation amount, really, of how. Just open it up a bit there. Let's hear that in context. Well, so continual fiddling between these two is all you really need to worry about. And the modulation amount is how much of that vicious initial zappy sort of feel you want. And for that, I think it's useful to go between headphones and the real world, just to make sure you get the best of both between the clickiness and the actual deep audio thump. And really that's all you need to do for the bass drum, just for the basic sound of it. There is a second oscillator here. It's on sine. You can put it on noise, turn up the frequency. And the mix here, the amount is going to be the mix between the noise and the thump. You could just give it a tiny bit, just to give it a little bit of flavour on top, and then filter can give that a little bit of extra flavour as well. So you've got just a tiny bit of crunch on top, which might be to your taste. The other one that we can do is the transients, and by default it's snap, which is an extra little pitch envelope in itself. This is the pitch envelope amount, which you can hear that coming in, and this is the frequency or offset is the wave crossing point. So you get that little click back again if you want it, or go for one of the tiny little samples. But let's stay on the snap, just give it a little bit more. You can soften it all a bit, give it a bit of a rattle. And LFO, I don't think we need to do anything with the LFO on the bass drum. Let's just keep it nice and simple. You can swap between that triangle and the sine, but once you've heard it 300 times, I don't know, as your judgments start to wear thin. So for now, let's say that's what we like. So let's move along to the next one. We'll make this a bit of a, well, it is a tom, and we'll stick with the rough sort of set of sounds that they've given us. So we've got a kick, tom, a little zappy thing, snare, a splishy splosh, might make that maybe a clap, and the closed hat and the open hat. So we'll stick with these, but just try to enhance them a bit. So we're on to the tom. Oops, so I'll select that. Go back into performance so we can play it. And then let's see what we can do with this one. Again, I like sticking with the octaves just out of habit, really. Now, you'll recall with the slope parameter, 127 gives you, I think it's logarithmic, but it's like a gate. Stays open for a set amount of time, depending on what the decay is set to, and then closes. Midway, you've got a linear envelope, and then down the bottom you've got a snappy little exponential which disappears to a click at 0, but in the single digits gives you a nice little exponential zap. But we'll open this up a little bit just because our kick drum is pretty short, so we'll let this breathe a bit more. That's not too bad. Yeah, I mean, here we could again add a little bit of, it's a bit loud, let's turn the volume down a bit. Could add a little bit of noise, but I've got a little bit there. So let's leave that off for now. Transient. Well, snap. You can just hear it there if you try hard. Just for an extra tiny little click. Now, there is a lot of bottom end in here, so we can go for a high pass and see at maximum. It cancels the whole thing out. So let's take the drive off, put the volume back up so it's a bit more pure. So that's not too bad perhaps. Oh, that's all right. Let's move along. So we'll have our little clavy thing. Turn that on. Turn the tom off. Yeah, well, so we've selected that voice. That's good. Back into performance. Yeah, let's pump it up a bit. A little bit brighter. Give it a bit more here. Pitch envelope. Yeah. Give the a little bit of noise. Snap. Let's see what we can do with this. Haven't done much with the LFOs so far. I should mention back on the pitch envelope, if you hit it again, you go into the velocity envelope. So you've got destination, amount, and then you've got, stop that. And then you've got just where the velocity will directly affect the volume. There's a lot you can do with velocity, so we'll save that until next time when we've actually got a velocity controller connected. Otherwise, you have to go in manually into the notes and change the velocity amount, and it all gets a bit tedious. So you can actually use velocity to basically switch between sounds. Quite interesting, but that's for next time. Where were we? Ah, the LFO. So this little guy, let's put it on 16th notes, give it a bit of goomph. Maybe put it on a random waveform. Press this again to get into the second page. It's voice 3, so we'll re-trigger whenever voice 3 hits. Offset, where in the waveform it starts, we'll leave that where it is. It'll affect voice 3, and then the all-important thing, what's the destination? Oscillator coarse. Oscillator fine. Yeah, maybe that's just a bit seasick waveform. Okay. And all of them have their place. But let's go to the old classic filter frequency. So getting quite a bit of variation there, and that's not a bad thing. Take the drive off. Let's see what we've got. That's quite survivable. Let's go to the snare. So what we've got at the moment, and that's sort of serviceable, but maybe a bit dull. So again, I'll put it on an octave. You thought I wasn't going to be that pedantic, didn't you? But no, I put them all on octaves. So we've got the mix between the drum sound and the noise sound. And this is the pitch of the noise, which, if you want a lo-fi effect, you can take it all the way down. But I tend to leave it up and then fiddle with the noise with a filter. Let's mix it pretty heavily towards the drum sound. And then the drum waveform. And you can put it on noise and then have a secondary noise, but let's be traditional. Keep it on sine. Now this is a different model synth engine to the first three, so here we've got the repeat parameter, but we won't use that for the snare this time. Just open it up just a little bit, make it a bit snappier on the slope. Now the pitch mod. So you can hear a rather profound effect the pitch mod makes from sort of flabby nothingness to zappy sound, but we'll go for something modest. There's the velocity envelope again, which we won't go to. FM, well, there's no FM on the snare model. Then we're into the click. Could go for extra little sample here. Let's pump up the volume. We've got the frequency. So get a little click on that. That's not so bad. Now on the filter, the interesting thing with the filter here, and you can really hear it with the high pass, is that the filter only affects the noise component. It doesn't affect the drum component. So that's sort of interesting, I think. And here there's all the flavors of our wonderful universe. And no matter where you go, you sort of go, oh, that's not bad. Yeah, that's not bad. No, that's not bad. So, whatever you think. Now with the LFO, we can try to do something perhaps a little bit tricky here maybe. Let's go to 16th notes, give it a fair amount so we can hear what's going on. With waveform we'll go, the sharpest one you can go is exponential down. Click it again for the second page. We want it to re-trigger whenever voice 4 hits. We want it to affect voice 4. Still not hearing anything. Destination. So we could go oscillator course, which gives it a very pronounced zap. Or the other obvious choice is the filter. Now you can hear it's sort of got a flam type effect, which obviously if you open the decay up, you're going to hear that much more pronounced. We can change it to 30 seconds. So you can sort of get a flam effect with that. Those off for now. Sort of subtle or more obvious. But if this is short enough, then you don't get that flam effect. It's just like an extra little envelope. So on frequency, we've still kept that underlying oscillator hit, but if we go to coarse tuning, then that underlying oscillator now turns into a zap. We can dial that back a bit. And then if you want that little flam effect or not. And then hear the mix. And progressively dial out that drum and go for the noise. So maybe it's not a bad thing. Just have a bit more noise in there. Well, there's a whole world of filters to explore as well. Getting, it's almost like a 80s style gated snare, and then you get the little flammy hit behind it if you open that up. So 100 flavors there, but let's just stick with that one for now. And move along to the next sound, which will be our Clavything. I'll make sure it's quite complementary to the snare. Check I'm on the right one. The worst thing to do is to start changing all sorts of parameters and then realize you're on the wrong voice. Always worth checking. So here we are. We'll try to make this like a clap. It's high-pitched noise, which is quite a reasonable start. Let's leave that where it is. We'll give it a few repeats. velocity envelope, won't do anything with that. The FM is not going to make any difference because we're on the noise waveform. It would make a difference if we were on one of these other ones, but we'll not do anything with that. We could put a little transient on it, but let's skip that for now. And the filter, Highpass. Now, here we just have the question, what do you think? It sounds like a hand clap. Is that close? Maybe. Now with the LFO, we'll just see whether we can introduce a little bit of human randomness to it, so we won't put it on sync. We'll have a very slow frequency. Give it a bit of modulation so we can hear what it's doing. The waveform, yeah, well, on random. Retrigger on, what are we on? 5. Effect voice 5, and the destination actually, let's take the retrigger off, because otherwise the waveform will start every time we hit, whereas we just want it really to be drifting around. So maybe it's drifting a bit too slow. Put on envelope decay. Sometimes I just put it up high just so I can see what it's doing and then wind it back. Well, it's definitely changing each time. That's not so bad. A little bit of drive at the end there. Do we need that? Maybe. Okay, let's move along. So we're on to closed hat and open hat, and these share the voice, and the only difference, closed hat is 1 decay and the open hat is decay 2. Let's pump it up a bit and put that on noise. Open it up just a little bit. Nothing on the velocity envelope. FM's not going to do anything to the noise. We won't have a transient. Highpass. The resonance, not a bad thing. And then with the LFO, let's on 16th notes. Get a bit of goomph. Put it on a random waveform. Second page. Re-trigger on voice 6. Destination. We'll be traditional and go for the filter frequency again. We don't need very much. That's what that sounds like. Well, that's not a bad thing. Let's say we like that. So we go save kit, edit name, yes. We'll call this clomp. Save kit clomp. But that's not all we've got to do, of course. Got to save the project. And that's our kit. Well, next time we'll do something a bit more exotic because there's lots of things we haven't touched upon, velocity being the obvious one, but also things like panning and effects. We can do ducking from voice to voice using the LFOs and maybe creating some sounds which are a bit stranger. Anyway, until then, see ya.